Welcome to the GMAT Strategy Podcast. You're here because you believe there's a better way to study for the GMAT, and so do I. I created the GMAT strategy to maximize your results and minimize your efforts so you can get to the fun parts about business school and life as quickly as possible. My name is Isaac Puglia, and I've been teaching GMAT classes and tutoring privately for the GMAT for over 6 years, and I personally have achieved a 99th percentile score on an official GMAT exam and helped hundreds of students get into the business schools of their choice. I'm excited to be a part of your MBA journey since I think the world can benefit from the best possible business leaders that we can find. And if this show is bringing you value, please share it with your friends and family who are studying for the GMAT so that together we can make this process as easy and painless for as many people as we possibly can. Let's go. Let's do some more GMAT problems together. So I'm in the 11th edition of the official guide. I'm working along with Sal Khan's Khan Academy videos, and there's a link to the video on the problems that I'm about to go through in the description of this podcast if you want to follow along with Sal's sort of just step-by-step solution approaches. I'm going to be doing sort of like a play-by-play commentary on his approach and also offering my perspective on these questions since we're really here to talk about strategy at the end of the day. So we're doing problem solving number 4. And if you didn't listen to last week's episode, I just recommend pausing the podcast and either solving the question on your own or thinking about how you would solve it before you listen to my take on it. And if you really want to be the best that you possibly can be and get the most value out of this, make sure you have something to write on as you're listening to this podcast. Of course, I'm aware that many of you are not going to be in a place where writing things down is going to be practical, and that's why you're listening to a podcast. And so I'm going to do the best I can to cater to that. But I think practicing quality scratch work habits is probably the smartest thing that you can do when it comes to getting a great GMAT quant score. And honestly, same goes for verbal, but it just looks different. So if you have a place to write, go ahead and write these down. Otherwise, here we go. Problem solving number 4 says, a case contains C cartons. Each carton contains B boxes, and each box contains 100 paper clips. How many paper clips are contained in 2 cases? A couple things that you would want to think when you see a question like this. First is this is probably just going to wind up being straight multiplication, and the main thing that you want to be thinking when a question starts to seem straightforward from a mathematical perspective is make sure you don't make mistakes. That's something that I have to remind myself of all the time, because as soon as I start feeling really confident, like, oh, I know how to do this, the math's going to be easy, then my instinct is to speed up. That's the opposite instinct that you should have. The instinct when you know how to do something on the GMAT should be to start slowing down. And there are many, many, many reasons for that, but I'm just going to leave it for that. If you really want to know like the depth of what I just said, then check out the video on my website, How to Achieve Your Goal Score in Half the Normal Time with Half the Normal Effort. And for sure, if it's within your budget, check out my class called the GMAT Strategy, where I go deep on how the algorithm works and how you can capitalize on that. And you'll understand why it's so important to go slowly when you know how to do things. But if you don't want to do any of that stuff, that's completely fine. I would recommend taking my word for it and ignore that instinct to speed up. So what does Sal do? I mean, I really like what he does at the very beginning. I think it's a great move. Check out the video. He does a really good job defining his variables. It's actually not a really good job. It's just a decent job. He could have done a better job. And what I find myself recommending to so many students over and over and over again when it comes to word problems and how to be really great at them is making sure that you define your variables clearly if you're going to be using algebra or variables in your solution path. So for example, he writes case equals C cartons, which is fine. He kind of takes notes as he reads, which, as I recommended in last week's episode, to not do. I would read the problem once and then go back. And then he puts carton equals B boxes. I think that's fine. And then he put boxes equals 100 paper clips. So it's pretty good. It's a lot better than what most people would do in that situation. Most people just go straight to 2C times B times 100 or something like that. Then he writes down something really good. He writes 2 cases equals 2C, and then he starts to sort of stepwise move through the algebraic solution, which is great. I think if you're going to take the algebraic solution, then that's a good way to go. And it's worth noting that in the book, the answer choices come in variable form. They're not numerical form. So the correct answer is option C, which reads 200C times B. So they make you answer in variable format. The other tip that I would definitely give here is make sure that you notice every time there are variables in the answer choices in problems, because that's a good sign you can use the plugging in number strategy, which I detailed in episode 13 of this podcast. So go back in time. It's season 2, episode 3, or the 13th episode total. And that's a really, really valuable strategy. Do you need it on this question? It really depends. It really depends on how confident you are with your algebraic translations. I think one of the most important things to do when you're studying for the GMAT is be honest with yourself about what your strengths and weaknesses are. And if you're not very good at translating questions and you often make mistakes, then this would be a great time to plug in numbers, because it sidesteps the need to do that. And thinking about real world quantity type questions like this word problem in terms of actual numbers instead of variables is just going to be a much, much better solution for so many of us. And you just want to embrace that if that's you. Of course, I do recommend working on your algebra skills, but I'll save those recommendations more specifically for later. For now, I think the most important takeaway for a question like this is make sure that when you're translating word problems, if you're going to do algebra, make sure you define your variables carefully. So you might do something like A equals case, like A equals the number of cases, and then A equals C cartons, something like that. It's very similar to what Sal does. Just make a habit out of it, then you don't have to think about it. It doesn't cost you any extra energy. Habits are free behavior. If you make them habitual, it doesn't cost any energy to focus on them. Moving on to the next problem. Problem solving number 5 says, the sum of prime numbers greater than 60 but less than 70 is, and then they just ask you to compute that. So Sal does this kind of an interesting way where he just thinks through all of them, and it's good. His approach is systematic. Like I said last week, some these problems are on the easier side, but the difficulty does escalate in the next question I found, which is kind of funny. So yeah, you're going to run through, you're going to say 61 is 61 prime, 62 is 62 prime, 63 is 63 prime. And a tip I often find myself giving to people is if there are fewer than 20 numbers to tabulate in a question, it's a really good idea to just write all 20 numbers down and kind of check them off as you go. Some of you who prefer to do more stuff in your head might really balk at that, but honestly, I think externalizing that stuff is, again, I've said it already once, so I'll say it again, it's one of the smartest things you can do in terms of growing your GMAT quant score. Couple tips. Definitely make sure you memorize your divisibility shortcuts, like how to know if a number is divisible by 3, how to know if a number is divisible by 4, how to know if a number is divisible by 5, by 6, etc. The most important ones here are if a number ends in an even number, like the units digit, the ones digit of the number is even, then the whole number is even. So we can discount 62, we can discount 64, we can discount 66 and 68. None of those are going to be prime because they're all even. 2 is the smallest and the only even prime number as far as the GMAT is concerned. And then the trick for 3 is the sum of the digits, of the number. If the sum of the digits of the number is divisible by 3, then the overall number is divisible by 3. So for example, the number 60, the sum of the digits would be 6, which is the tens digit, 0, which is the units digit. I add those together, 6 plus 0 equals 6. Because 6 is divisible by 3, I know 60 is divisible by 3. Now, a lot of you probably knew that 60 was divisible by 3 already. I'm just using that as an example. So when I get to 61, which would be the first number to test here, I'm thinking, well, 6 plus 1 equals 7. So it's not divisible by 3. 1 is the units digit, which is odd. So the number's not even. It's not divisible by 2. It's not divisible by 3. Is it divisible by 4? Well, the best trick for divisibility by 4 is it divisible by 2 times in a row, which it's not. It's not even. Divisible by 5 means it ends in 5 or 0. That doesn't work out. 6 means it's divisible by 2 and 3. We've already determined that it is not even. Divisible by 7, I haven't found a great trick for that. There might be one online if I went into the netherworlds of Google for a bit, but I just like to find a nearby multiple. So here I would do 70, and then I would count up or down. Here I'm counting down, so 70 minus 7 means that 63 is a multiple of 7, so 61 is definitely not. 8, the trick for 8 is it divisible by 2 3 times in a row? It's not even, so it's not going to be divisible by 8. Divisible by 9, does the sum of the digits add up to a number divisible by 9? It's exactly the same trick as 3, except the sum is divisible by 9. 6 plus 1 is 7, so it is not divisible by 9. Is it divisible by 10? Well, it doesn't end in 0, so there's a high likelihood that 61 is prime. Now I can get into 11, I can think about the multiples of 11, but you've probably memorized that all 2-digit multiples of 11 are just two numbers repeating, like 33, 22, 11, 66, etc. 12 is even, 13 is sometimes tricky, but that would be worth checking if you had to, but it's really looking like 61 is prime. Sal doesn't really go to those depths in the video. He kind of just reasons it out in his head, and he kind of admits that he doesn't know there isn't a calculator on the GMAT, which is like, all right, that's a little bit of a bummer, but at the same time, you're bringing me these videos for free, so hey, free pass on that. And yeah, 61 is prime. But those are some really good tactics that I strongly recommend memorizing. Then we get to 62 is even. We don't have to worry about that. 63, 6 plus 3 is 9, so that's divisible by 9. It's also divisible by 3. 64 is even. 65 is divisible by 5 because it ends in 5. 66 is even. 67 ends up being the other prime number here because if you run the whole gamut like I just did, you wind up with the same result. 68 is even. 69 adds up to 15, and so that's divisible by 3. And then 70 is not in the span because it says less than 70. And that's another good time to make a good tip for you, which is that if it says greater than 60, it doesn't include 60. If it says greater than 60 inclusive, now it includes 60. So if it says greater than 60 but less than 70, 60 and 70 are not included. If it said greater than 60 but less than 70 inclusive, that means including the endpoints. So make sure you look out for that. GMAT is very intentional with that. Same with the words between. If it said the prime numbers between 60 and 70, but doesn't say inclusive, it doesn't include 60 and 70. So put that in the back of your mind just in case that comes up. Definitely another good tip here. Oh, sorry. So the solution is 61 plus 67, which is 128. Sal ends up just doing that in his head. Here's the tip I would give. If you're never making mistakes doing addition like that in your head, fine. I'm not going to push it. But I personally would do the long addition unless I'm 1,000% sure that my addition in my head is absolutely 1,000% correct, or if there's nothing even close to 128 in the answer choices. I'm not looking at the answer choices on this problem, so I don't know if that's really obvious, but don't be afraid to do long multiplication, long subtraction, long division, especially if you find that you're particularly error prone for that. Because here's the thing, if you can do a computation in 5 seconds or less in your head, it's not going to take you more than 5 or 10 seconds to do the computation manually on your scratch paper. And the amount of risk that you take out of the situation with that extra 10 seconds is 1,000% worth it, in my opinion. Last tip here would be to, if you're really targeting a top score, you don't have to do this if you're not trying to crack 700, but I think if you're trying to crack 730 or higher, you definitely want to memorize your primes under 100. Just memorize them, make a flashcard, run through them every single day like you would with your times tables. Just know that 61's prime off the top of your head, and know that 31's prime off the top of your head. Just memorize them all. I had them memorized at one point when I was studying for the GMAT, and that knowledge has long since faded. Use it or lose it. Use it or lose it. Okay, moving on. So it's a lot of tips on that question. Simple problem, but a lot you can learn. A lot you can learn from every single problem in official guide sources. More on that in the class that I mentioned, GMATstudy digital video class. I talk about how to capitalize on that when you're reviewing math questions. Problem solving number 6. A rainstorm increased the amount of water stored in State J reservoirs from 124 billion gallons to 138 billion gallons. If the storm increased the amount of water in the reservoirs to 82% of the total capacity, approximately how many billions of gallons of water were the reservoirs short of total capacity prior to the storm? So that's one where you may want to rewind or write down the actual question if you're doing this while you're commuting on a public transit or something like that, if you're not driving, etc. Then definitely write that down because that's a lot to hold in your head. You know, I used to teach this problem all the time back in the day when I was teaching Manhattan prep classes, and I really liked teaching this problem as an example of a couple different important strategies. I think I used to do it in like the first or second class. I did it pretty early on because it was a really great moment for people to realize that a lot of their instincts are not particularly good when it comes to a question like this, unless they retrain them. But yeah, let's see what Sal does. So Sal, again, just kind of translates as he goes. I'm not a huge fan of that, but again, if it's working for you, you don't need to fix it. He actually does he gets the translation right, which is not a surprise. So the equation that you should wind up with, if you haven't paused and attempted the problem on your own, is 0.82 or 82 over 100 times the letter C, which would stand for the total capacity, which he does not define his variable in this situation. I would strongly recommend writing C equals total capacity right above all the math you're about to put in. It's probably not a game changer on this particular question, but I promise you it's going to make another question in the future easier, and that's why you want to make it a habit so that you don't have to think about it. Because here's the thing, you often don't know what you need to be doing to decrease missing questions you know how to do. Otherwise, you'd already be doing it. So you want to do it on every question so that when you need it and you're not aware that you need it, it's saving the day already for you. You're solving a problem before it happens, basically. So 0.82 C equals 138. If you're more of a decimal person, it's fine to write it that way. I strongly recommend writing all your percentages as fractions, 82 over 100. I strongly recommend doing that, especially if you're very math computation oriented, because that's going to make all your numbers smaller. So Sal ends up doing long division of 82 into 13,800, which he doesn't struggle with it that badly, but so many students I interact with would just get crushed by something like that, and it's just not necessary on this question. So eventually you do the math and you get 124 minus 114 or something like that, I think. Or sorry, no, you get 168 minus 124, and the answer is 44, I think. But what tip would I give? The main tip here, and this is really, really valuable, is anytime you see the word approximately, they're inviting you to estimate. They're telling you, hey, you don't even need to get the actual answer here. So make sure you capitalize on that. If they invite you to estimate, definitely estimate. What I would do here is I would round 138 to 140, and I would round 0.82 down to 0.8. And then I would just end up doing 14,000 divided by 80. And I would just slash and burn on my fraction until I got to some smaller numbers. And then I'm not going to get 44 exactly, but I think 44 ends up being the largest answer here. I think you get an answer that's slightly larger than that, and that's because you increase the numerator while simultaneously decreasing the denominator, which is a great thing to keep in mind if you're estimating is, did you estimate too high or too low if you have to go between two answer choices. And if there's one strategy I think that's underutilized on the GMAT, well, there's too many strategies that are underutilized on the GMAT to talk about here, but estimation is one of them for sure, and that's a great example of when estimation can save you a lot of painful computation. And to be honest, just to give you that extra edge, I'll estimate on problems that don't have the word approximately plenty if I feel like it's okay, or if I feel like it's going to take too long to do the actual computation and I'm running up against the clock, if that makes sense. So feel free to reach out with questions if you have them. As always, I'm at the GMATstudy on Instagram. I'm / the GMATstudy on Reddit. I'm / the GMATstudy on Facebook. In the meantime, if you want more advice, if you want more stuff like this of going over problems and giving my take on them, I go way deeper and in way more detail and actually show you my own solution paths along with this type of color commentary in my digital video class called the GMATstudy. It's not part of the main video class, but when you sign up for the class, you get access to the private Facebook group where every week I go live and I do this kind of thing with problems, or I'll just answer people's questions if they have specific questions about certain problems they're struggling with, certain situations they're struggling with. Like just last week, I helped this guy. He watched the live video I did, and his verbal score was able to go up by 3 points just using the tactic that I gave him. Not that he wasn't studying on his own already, but that's like a pretty good ROI for a 15-minute video, if you ask me. So those are the types of results that we're getting in the class. If you have more questions about it, you can reach out to me anytime. And if you would like to take a live class with me where I teach you everything from start to finish that you need to know about the GMAT, including all the content and the strategy, then check out the link in the description of this podcast, testcrackers.org, and use the code TGS for $100 off any class at Testcrackers. As always, my greatest hope is that this content will make your studies as easy and as painless as they can possibly be. If you want more tips and strategies for optimizing your performance on the GMAT, just head to my website, thegmatstrategy.com, and check out my video presentation on how to achieve your goal score in half the normal time and with half the normal effort. In the meantime, this is a weekly show, so please subscribe and stay positive and stay consistent with your studies. I'll talk to you soon.